The great halls of the Galactic Council stretched high above, their ceilings painted with glowing stars. It was here that leaders from 1,000 species gathered, whispering about the strange signal that had appeared at the far edge of known space. For centuries, one name had been spoken only in stories, only in fear, and never in truth. That name was Earth. Most of the Council believed humans were only myths, old stories told by explorers who had vanished. Legends about a race that once stood tall and proud. They were said to have strange minds that could create impossible machines. They were said to have ships that looked like mountains of steel, but no evidence was ever found. So with time, the stories became jokes, bedtime tales, or warnings told to frighten younglings. Yet deep inside the council chambers, some remembered. The elders of the Threxian race spoke of battles their ancestors had fought. They said humans were not just warriors, they were storms given flesh. One elder, his voice trembling with age, repeated the words his great-grandfather had written, "Fear the Terran warships, for they fight like no other." The younger races laughed at such words, calling them exaggerations. They believed no such monsters ever lived, but now, a signal had come and it carried the mark of Earth. It was weak, broken, like an echo that had traveled across centuries. Yet the code was clear. It was human. The Council grew restless. Some claimed it was only a trick. Perhaps pirates had faked it. Perhaps it was just a glitch in the system. But others felt something heavy settle in their chests. What if the myths were real? What if the storm was waking? A group of scouts was sent to the far edge of space where the signal was born. They traveled across the dark void, passing dead suns and frozen worlds. At first they found nothing but silence, but then, in the endless black, they discovered a strange machine. It floated alone, ancient, scarred, but still alive. It was a beacon, a warning buoy, and on its cracked metal frame was one word written in bold letters. Earth, the scouts recorded, the message that the buoy still played, though the voice was distorted by age. "This is Terran space, trespass at your own risk." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made even the most fearless alien shiver. The scouts could hardly believe what they had found. They returned the recording to the Council, and within days every corner of the galaxy was speaking of it. Fear and laughter clashed in equal measure. Some mocked the idea of humans returning. They said no race could vanish for so long and still live. Others argued that no pirate could have built such a machine. No one dared to ignore the truth. The signal was real, and it had survived the ages. The council chamber grew loud with debates, voices rising and falling until even the walls seemed to tremble. Among the council was an alien historian named Caro of the Yethrin. He had spent his life studying myths, and the human legends were his obsession. He stepped forward and spoke, his voice shaking but clear. "The humans were never destroyed. They went into hiding. They watched us. They waited. They warned us once, and now the warning has returned." The room fell silent. Some wanted to silence him, to call him mad. But in their hearts they could not ignore the chill his words brought. Beyond the council, rumors spread like fire across the stars. Merchants whispered about ships that vanished near the signal zone. Miners spoke of shadows moving in the void. Fleets that looked like mountains, but vanished when approached. Smugglers swore they saw lights far too organized to be natural. Some swore they heard voices in the dark, the same words that played on the buoy. "Do not trespass." Still, the council could not believe fully. Pride clouded their minds. They had built empires. They had fought wars across the stars. What could one lost species do against them? They decided to send warships, a small fleet, to test the signal and see what truth it held. The vote was cast, the order was given, and the fleet departed. But among the shadows of space, far from their eyes, something stirred. The myths had never died, they had only been waiting. In the silence of the void, massive shapes drifted unseen, each one larger than the alien ships sent to investigate, each one carrying banners that had not flown for centuries. Their steel hulls glowed faintly with power, their engines whispered like thunder waiting to awaken, and in the heart of that dark armada, a single human voice spoke, low and steady. "The galaxy has forgotten us, but it will remember soon." The legends were no longer forgotten. They were about to become truth again. The fleet sent by the Galactic Council cut through the stars like silver blades. Their ships were proud, polished and armed with the latest weapons of alien technology. Crews whispered nervously about the signal they were sent to investigate. Some laughed, saying it was only an old machine. Others kept their voices low, fearing that the myths might hold truth. When the fleet arrived at the edge of the dark region where the buoy had been found, they moved carefully, scanning every corner of the void. At first they found nothing new, only the same beacon, floating like a ghost. Its battered frame spun slowly, lights flickering weakly. The lid commander, a proud Zethrian named Varkos, laughed at the sight. This is what the Council fears, an old piece of junk? No human ghosts will rise from this. But as the fleet drew closer, the buoy's broken system stirred to life once more. It broadcast its message again, louder this time, echoing across their comms. This is Terran space. Trespass at your own risk. The voice was deep, human, and though distorted, it carried power. Even the youngest cadet felt their scales or fur prickle at the sound. Varkos waved it off, calling it a trick. But doubt crept into the hearts of many. The scouts sent out small probes to search deeper. Their instruments picked up strange readings, hidden energy spikes that flickered and vanished. It was as if something massive was present, yet cloaked. The scientists on board argued. Some said it was only radiation from old stars. Others whispered that it was ships, enormous ships waiting in silence. The probes pushed further into the void. Cameras recorded only darkness. Then, for a single second, one probe caught a glimpse of something impossible. Metal, endless metal, stretching like a wall across the stars. Before the feed cut out, the crew saw the shape of a colossal hull, scarred but strong. The signal ended, and the probe was gone. Panic rippled through the smaller ships. Reports filled the comms with frightened voices. Varkos silenced them with a roar. Illusions! Tricks! If humans were real, they would have shown themselves long ago. Yet even as he spoke, another probe vanished, then another, until silence consumed them. The Council fleet pressed forward, unwilling to retreat and be called cowards. Then, without warning, the buoy changed. Its lights flared, brighter than before, and a new message played, not broken this time, not distorted. The voice was cold and sharp. Leave now, or face destruction. Every alien heart froze. The words were not from the past. They were not old recordings. They were new, alive. Someone was speaking to them in real time. Varkos growled and gave the order. Fire on the buoy, destroy this toy and end the fear. Plasma bolts and torpedoes struck the beacon, tearing it apart in a storm of fire. Pieces of human steel scattered into the void. The crew cheered nervously, believing the nightmare was over. But then the stars shifted. From the darkness, shapes began to move. At first, they looked like shadows, then like asteroids breaking apart. But as the light of alien weapons reflected on them, the truth was revealed. Dozens of enormous ships, silent and black, glided forward. Their hulls bore marks of battles older than any empire alive, and yet they were not broken. They were alive. They were waiting. The first Terran warship emerged, fully from the shadows. It dwarfed the alien cruisers. Its size was monstrous, its design brutal, armored like a beast of war. The alien crews stared in silence, their pride melting into fear. The myths were not only real, they were greater than the stories. The Terran ship did not fire. It only opened a channel. The same voice spoke, steady and cold. You were warned. This is your only chance. Words echoed across every ship. No alien dared to breathe. But Varkos was blinded by pride. He shouted for his fleet to attack. Alien warships surged forward, unleashing a storm of plasma fire. The void lit up with explosions. But when the light faded, the Terran ship still stood. Its shields glowed faintly, not even scratched. Then came the reply. A single beam of energy erupted from the Terran dreadnought. It sliced through 3 alien cruisers as if they were paper. Their screams filled the comms before silence returned. The fleet froze in shock. Their strongest weapons had done nothing, but a single Terran shot had destroyed them. The humans had shown their hand. The myths had risen. The first signal was no longer just a warning. It was a promise, and the galaxy would soon understand its meaning. Far away, in the halls of the council, the message of destruction reached. Some still refused to believe. Others wept. The myths were no longer forgotten. The storm had arrived. The wreckage of the alien cruisers drifted in silence, torn apart by a single human shot. The survivors of the council fleet froze in place, their weapons cold, their hearts pounding with fear. They had come to prove that the myths of Earth were nothing but dust. But now they faced the truth with their own eyes. The Terran warship stood like a mountain in the void, its hull scarred by old battles, its guns glowing faintly as if alive. No banners flew, no bright lights flashed. It was silent, cold, and patient. The silence was worse than the destruction. It felt as if the ship itself was watching, waiting for them to move. The alien commander Varkos shouted for the fleet to regroup. His pride still fought against the fear crawling in his chest. He ordered them to prepare for another strike, but the crews hesitated. Their hands shook over the controls. They had seen what happened to the others. They knew this was no normal battle. This was a death sentence. Suddenly, the void shifted again. From behind the great Terran ship, more shapes began to appear. First 1, then 3, then 10. Soon the entire darkness seemed to be alive with shadows. Massive ships revealed themselves, sliding out of cloak, their black hulls glinting faintly in the starlight. Each one was larger than the next, some shaped like blades, others like fortresses. The alien fleet could not believe their eyes. They had been surrounded the whole time. The Terran armada had been waiting, silent, unseen, watching as the aliens fired on their ancient beacon. Now the hunters had revealed themselves. The aliens were not facing one ship. They were facing a fleet older and deadlier than anything in the galaxy. One of the alien officers whispered in terror, "This is not possible. They were myths. They cannot be here." But no one answered, because every soul aboard every ship knew it was true. The myths had risen, and they were real. The Terran armada did not fire. Their weapons glowed softly, their engines whispered like thunder, but they remained still. The silence was heavy. It pressed down on every alien heart. It felt like standing before a predator that had already chosen whether to strike or not. At last, the human voice spoke again. It came not from one ship, but from all of them, echoing across the comms. "This is Terran space, you were warned. Leave now and live." The voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 1,000 storms. For a moment, the alien fleet almost obeyed. The crews wanted to run, to flee into hyperspace and never look back. But Varkos, blinded by rage and shame, roared into his comms. "Do not fear shadows. They are tricks, illusions to break us. We will not bow to ghosts." He gave the order to fire again. The alien fleet unleashed another storm. Missiles, plasma, bolts, energy beams, all of it lit the void. It was a wall of fire aimed at the silent armada. For long seconds, explosions filled the black, and the aliens thought maybe they had won. But when the smoke cleared, the Terran armada still stood. Not a single ship had fallen. Their shields shimmered like walls of light, and then faded again as if mocking the attempt. The reply was merciless. The largest Terran dreadnought opened fire. Its broadside guns released a storm of beams. Each shot cut through alien ships with ease. Cruisers broke apart, frigates melted into burning debris. The screams of dying crews filled the comms before fading into silence. Still, the armada did not chase. They did not destroy all. They only answered with precision, enough to remind the aliens that resistance was useless. Then the human voice returned, colder now. "You still stand, you still live, only because we choose it. Leave, before we change our minds." The surviving alien ships pulled back. Fear overcame pride. The fleet retreated into hyperspace, dragging their wounded vessels with them. Varkos shouted and cursed, but no one listened anymore. The crew knew the truth. The myths had returned, and they could not be stopped. When the survivors limped back to Council space, the news spread, faster than light. Worlds shook with fear. Some races prepared for war, others whispered of surrender. Merchants, smugglers, and civilians all told the same tale. The humans had returned, and their armada was beyond anything the galaxy could fight. But far from the Council worlds, deep in the void, the Terran armada remained, silent as ever. Their ships formed a wall of steel and fire at the edge of their space. They did not chase. They did not boast, they simply waited. Their silence was louder than any war cry. In the heart of the largest Terran dreadnought, a captain stood at the command deck. His face was lit by the glow of ancient controls. His voice was steady. "The galaxy remembers us now," he said. "Let them tremble. But we do not seek their worlds. We seek only to guard our own." The armada shifted slightly, their engines humming like distant thunder. Then once again they fell silent, unseen, forgotten by those who wished to forget. Yet every alien who had looked into that darkness would never forget the sight. The myths had returned, and they had teeth of steel. The silent armada had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Galactic Council sat in silence when the reports arrived. The chamber that once roared with laughter and debates now trembled under a single truth. The humans were real, their armada had risen from the void, and they had crushed a Council fleet without effort. Some leaders demanded peace, others demanded war, but none could erase the fear that gripped their hearts. The survivors who had faced the Terran ships spoke with pale faces and shaking voices. They described warships larger than any dreadnought, with armor that laughed at plasma fire and guns that split cruisers in half. They described the silence of the armada, the calm voice that had warned them, and the cold precision of the human reply. None dared to call it myth anymore. Still, pride is a poison, and the Council could not swallow it. A second fleet was gathered, larger, stronger, with ships from dozens of species. They armed themselves with weapons forged from the brightest minds of the galaxy. They called it the Alliance Fleet, and they swore it would humble the humans once and for all. Far at the edge of Terran space, the armada waited, silent as always. Their ships formed a dark wall across the stars, unmoving, unshaken. The Alliance Fleet arrived like a storm. Thousands of ships flashing with banners, engines blazing. Their commanders spoke of honor, glory, and victory. They wanted to prove to their people that humans could bleed. The first clash began with arrogance. The alien commanders sent forward their fastest ships to probe the Terran defenses. Sleek frigates darted in, firing streams of plasma and torpedoes. Their weapons lit up the void with fire. For a moment, it looked as if the Terrans would fall. But when the light faded, the armada still stood untouched. Then the Terrans answered, but not with guns. Instead, a voice echoed across the comms, calm, steady, and cold. "You were warned, leave this place, or you will not return." The aliens laughed bitterly. They called it bluff. And the order was given. The Alliance fleet surged forward in full force. The void exploded into chaos. Thousands of alien weapons struck the Terran line. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma storms filled the black. Yet the Terran shields shimmered like glass walls, bending but never breaking. The humans did not fire at once. They waited. They let the Alliance think they were winning. And then, like thunder, the armada struck. The first Terran broadside tore through 100 alien ships in a single volley. Entire squadrons were erased, vaporized in blinding light. Alien admirals screamed orders, but their commands drowned in the cries of dying crews. Still, they pressed on, pouring everything they had into the storm. But each shot from a Terran gun carved holes through their numbers. Each beam was precise. Each missile found its mark. In the center of the armada, a super dreadnought moved forward. Its hull carried the emblem of Earth. Its guns were ancient, but alive with deadly power. With one strike, it split the flagship of the Alliance fleet in half. The alien commander aboard had only seconds to scream before fire consumed him. The fleet wavered, their pride breaking. Yet still, the humans did not chase. They destroyed those who attacked. But they did not cross the line. Their ships did not rush forward to claim more. They simply stood, a wall of steel and fire reminding the galaxy that this was their space. The battle dragged for hours, but the result was never in doubt. By the end, thousands of alien ships were reduced to wreckage, drifting and burning in. Silence, only a fraction escaped, limping back toward Council space. Their people would see their broken fleets and know the truth. The humans could not be defeated. The last message from the Terrans came after the battle ended. It was not loud, it was not shouted, it was calm, almost quiet. This is your only warning. We do not seek war, but we will not bow. Cross this line again, and you will not survive. Then the Armada returned to silence, their guns cooling, their engines dimming. Back in the council chambers, the leaders were shaken. Some demanded surrender, begging for peace before more fleets were lost. Others still clung to their pride, whispering that the Terrans must have limits, that they could be broken if pressed harder. But the galaxy's people were not fools. Merchants, workers, and soldiers alike knew the truth. The humans were no myth. They were the storm, and the storm had returned. On hidden worlds, children who had once laughed at human stories now whispered them with awe. Soldiers polished their armor with trembling hands, knowing they might be sent against the Armada next, and across the void the Terrans remained silent, waiting, guarding their borders, as if daring the galaxy to try again. The first clash was not just a battle, it was a warning written, in fire and steel, a warning the galaxy would never forget. The galaxy shook after the first clash. Wreckage of alien fleets drifted in the void, burned and broken, while whispers spread faster than light. No longer did anyone call humans a myth. No longer did anyone laugh at the old legends. They were real, and their warships were stronger than anything alive. Yet the Terrans remained silent. After the battle, their Armada did not move. They did not chase. They did not boast. They simply stood guard at the edge of their claimed space. Like ancient sentinels of steel, this silence frightened the galaxy more than open war, because no one knew what the humans would do next. In the council halls, fear divided the rulers. Some screamed for peace, begging to send envoys before the Terrans decided to strike. Others, poisoned by pride, demanded more fleets. They believed that with enough numbers, humanity could still be crushed. The arguments never ended, but outside those walls, common people no longer believed the council. They whispered that war against humans was death. Then, without warning, the silence broke. Deep in the void, massive Terran engines ignited, the Armada began to move. One by one, their dreadnoughts turned, their carriers opened their bays, and their cruisers took formation. The humans were no longer waiting, they were advancing. At first, the galaxy thought they were preparing for another slaughter. Fear surged as systems near the Terran border braced for invasion. But when the Armada emerged from hyperspace, they carried something. No one expected: banners. Old Terran banners glowing across their hulls, flags of blue, black, and white, carrying symbols that no alien could read but all could feel. The humans had not just come to fight, they had come to return. The first human message echoed across. The stars, clear and alive. We are the Terran Union, we do not hide anymore, these are our borders, and they will be honored. The words were calm, yet they struck like thunder. Entire sectors froze as they heard them. For the first time in centuries, humanity had spoken to the galaxy again. Across alien worlds, panic spread. Some governments immediately sent ships away from the Terran border. Afraid to test the warning, others tried to open channels, sending messages of peace. Some dared to prepare fleets, though their soldiers trembled as they boarded. All remembered the first clash, and none truly believed they could survive another, but the humans were not marching blindly. They did not strike every world, they moved with purpose, reclaiming systems that once bore their colonies. Dead planets lit with Terran lights again. Abandoned stations flickered to life. Old trade routes that had been lost were opened once more. It was as if ghosts had returned to flesh. Among the ET, Armada was the super dreadnought Iron Will. Its hull was blackened with scars from battles older than most empires. On its bridge, a Terran captain stood before his crew. His voice was steady. For too long we have been forgotten. For too long we let the galaxy believe we were gone, no longer. We are Earth and we are home. Each step forward sent shockwaves across the stars. Alien scouts who tried to follow were destroyed without hesitation. Human warships did not chase them. They simply cut them down with precise fire and returned to formation. It was not war for conquest. It was war for return. Soon the Council could no longer ignore it. Their spies reported entire sectors falling back under Terran control. Not through endless battles, but through sheer fear. Worlds near the border abandoned their post before a single shot was fired. They fled, leaving planets and stations empty, unable to face the storm they had awoken. The humans did not stop. They planted new beacons across their reclaimed systems. Each beacon carried the same message. This is Terran space. Trespass at your own risk. The same words that had once been laughed at were now feared. The message was not a bluff anymore. It was truth written in steel. For the first time, the galaxy truly understood. Humanity had never been erased. They had never been broken. They had been silent, watching, waiting, rebuilding, and now they had returned with warships that could crush entire fleets. In hidden corners of space, rebels and outcasts began to whisper, with hope. If the humans could defy the Council, maybe others could too. Empires that had ruled for centuries felt their grip weaken. The return of Earth was not just a threat, it was a spark. And sparks could set fire to the whole galaxy. But within the Armada, the Terrans were not celebrating. Their faces were grim, their voices cold. They did not seek glory or revenge. They only sought to reclaim what was theirs. Every captain, every soldier carried the same oath. We do not start wars, but we end them. The silence was over. Earth had returned. The galaxy could no longer pretend. The storm had spoken, and its voice carried across the stars. The galaxy was restless after the first clash. Markets froze, trade routes closed, and entire worlds whispered about the storm that had risen from the shadows. For generations. Humans had been called a myth, a bedtime story. But now the myth had burned fleets to ash, and silence was no longer comfort. It was terror. In the dark edge of space, the Terran Armada stirred. For weeks they had stood still, a wall of steel that did not advance. Their silence was heavier than battle. Every admiral in the Council asked the same question. What would they do next? The answer came when the first Terran ship broke formation, its engines lit with blue. Fire carving through the void with steady purpose. More followed. Dreadnoughts and carriers sliding into new positions, like giants waking from sleep. Soon, the entire Armada began to move, slow, relentless, unstoppable. The aliens who watched from distant probes sent frantic messages back to their leaders. The Terrans were not retreating. They were not waiting. They were advancing, across the void. Their ships carried glowing banners, symbols of Earth long thought lost. Stars reflected off their steel hulls, making them shine like blades. It was not an attack. It was a declaration. Earth had returned. The first transmission spread across the stars like thunder. We are Terran, we are no myth. These borders are ours. Trespass no more. The voice was calm, but it carried a weight that crushed every heart that heard it. Even the bravest captains lowered their eyes, for they knew the humans did not bluff. In the Council chambers, chaos erupted. Some leaders screamed that they must beg for peace. Others demanded a third fleet larger than any before to stop the advance, but the common people had already made their choice. They looked at the broken wreckage of 2 lost fleets, and they knew no wall of ships could hold back Earth. Meanwhile, the Terrans pressed forward, reclaiming their lost systems one by one. On dead worlds, they planted new beacons. Each beacon repeated the same message in cold human tone. This is Terran space. Trespass at your own risk. The words were carved into the stars now, no longer whispers of old machines. Stations abandoned centuries ago lit up again. Human lights glowed in the dark. Fleets guarded every outpost, like shepherds, returning to a flock they had left behind. And with each step the galaxy trembled. Merchants refused to trade near Terran borders. Soldiers deserted when ordered to fight near them. Smugglers told stories of giant carriers moving silently through the void, their hangars holding swarms of smaller ships like predators waiting to hunt. Some whispered that even the stars dimmed when the Terrans passed, as if space itself feared them, but not all feared. Some small worlds, long crushed under the rule of greater empires, began to cheer in secret. To them, the return of Earth was not doom but hope, if the humans could stand. Against the Council, maybe the chains of the galaxy could be broken, maybe the storm was freedom in disguise. On the flagship of the Armada, a super dreadnought named Iron Dawn, the Terran admiral stood before his crew. His face was stern, his voice steady. "We do not conquer. We do not enslave. We return what is ours, we guard what is ours. Let the galaxy understand this. We are Earth, and we are here." The Armada kept its word. They did not cross too far. They did not strike at random worlds, but every system that had once belonged to Earth lit up again with human presence, and every trespasser who dared to test them was erased in seconds, though. Council's spies returned with reports more frightening than battles. They said the humans were not only strong, they were organized, their fleets moved with precision. Every shot, every turn, every formation perfect. No wasted fire, no blind charges. It was war built on discipline, and discipline was harder to break than steel. The galaxy now faced a choice: surrender to the storm, or try once more to destroy it. Pride pushed some toward war, but fear whispered louder. And every night, as alien children looked up at their skies, they asked the same question their parents could not answer: what would the Terrans do next? For the first time in centuries, Earth's voice echoed clearly. Not in myths, not in rumors, but in living power. The silence of waiting had ended. The banners of humanity had been raised again. The storm had not come to conquer, but to return. And yet the galaxy knew, if anyone dared to test them again, the storm would not hold back. Earth had returned, and the stars themselves seemed to bow. Fear spread like fire across the galaxy. Whole worlds woke each morning to whispers of Earth's return. In markets, merchants refused to sail near Terran borders. In taverns, smugglers told stories of warships that moved like ghosts, silent, black, and endless. The news was the same in every system. The humans were not a myth, they were real, and they were stronger than any empire. On industrial worlds, soldiers trained with trembling hands. They had seen recordings of the first clash. They had seen Terran guns erase fleets in seconds. No speech from commanders could erase that memory. Even the bravest captains felt shame when asked to fight them. Some deserted, fleeing into the shadows rather than face the Armada again. In the Galactic Council chambers, the fear was louder than words. Leaders of 1,000 species argued with breaking voices. Some begged to send envoys at once to kneel, if necessary. Others shouted that to bow would be the end of their pride. Yet pride was fading. Fear was winning. The thought of another clash with humans was enough to silence even the proudest emperor. But not all feared equally. In hidden corners of the galaxy, small races and oppressed colonies began to whisper of hope. For centuries, the Council's great empires had ruled with iron hands, crushing weaker voices. Now the return of Earth looked different to them. It was not death, it was a chance. If the Terrans could resist the Council, maybe freedom was possible. Meanwhile, the Armada continued its silent march. They reclaimed lost stations, repaired forgotten shipyards, and planted beacons with their cold message: "This is Terran space, trespass at your own risk." The words echoed across the stars, repeated again and again, until no one could deny their truth. Wherever the Terrans went, fear followed. Alien spies reported the same chilling detail. The Terran fleets did not act like raiders or conquerors. They moved with precision. Every ship held formation. Every shot in battle was exact. There was no chaos, no wasted fire. It was war-shaped, like art, disciplined and cold. That discipline terrified admirals more than firepower, for firepower could be matched, but discipline could not be broken. On a desert world, a council governor gave a speech. He shouted that humans were cowards, hiding behind shadows, that they could be broken if the galaxy united. His people listened in silence, but their eyes betrayed doubt. They had seen the wreckage of fleets, they had heard the human voice that warned without fear. and deep inside they knew the governor was lying. Even the common traders changed their paths. Routes that once cut near Terran borders were abandoned. Ships now traveled longer, costlier ways, all to avoid the shadow of the Armada. To lose credits was easier than to lose a fleet, and so the galaxy bent not by choice but by fear. Yet the Terrans did not boast. They did not send grand speeches of conquest. Their silence was worse than any threat. It made the galaxy imagine what they might do. It made leaders lose sleep, waiting for a strike that never came. Some even said the silence itself was a weapon. On the flagship Iron Dawn, the Terran admiral looked over his star maps. Worlds once lost were marked again with Terran banners. His officers stood in silence, waiting for his words. At last he spoke. "The galaxy fears us, let it. Fear will hold them back more than fire. We do not need to destroy them. We only need them to remember." And so fear became law. Children in alien schools whispered the word Earth with awe and dread. Soldiers carved Terran emblems into walls as curses, while others carved them as prayers. Empires that once ruled with pride now whispered like frightened prey, waiting for the predator's next move. In the council, the most desperate voices grew louder. "If we wait, they will take everything," one shouted. "If we strike, we will die." Another answered. The chamber broke into shouts, yet none of the voices carried weight anymore. The galaxy's people did not listen to the council. They listened to the silence of the Armada, for across the stars, the truth was clear. Humanity did not need to conquer to rule. Their fear alone had already chained the galaxy. The Terrans had returned, not with endless words, but with cold discipline, silent ships, and war carved into steel and in every corner of space. From the richest palaces to the poorest mines, one thought haunted all. If the humans chose to strike again, no one would survive. The galaxy had reached its breaking point. Fear had spread across stars, but pride had not yet died. The council could no longer sit in silence while worlds slipped from their control. One by one, races that once bowed to them now trembled before Earth. The council's power was fading, and to save their pride, they gathered what remained of their strength. Thus began the creation of the Great Coalition. It was the largest armada the galaxy had ever seen. Fleets from 100 worlds, warships from every empire, carriers, dreadnoughts, and countless smaller ships. They filled the void with banners and lights, a sea of steel stretching beyond sight. The council promised their people that this armada would end the human storm. But the soldiers knew better. Fear lingered even as they boarded their ships. They remembered the first clash. They remembered the silence of the armada. They remembered the warning that came before the fire. Pride forced them forward, but their hearts whispered that they marched to their doom. The Terrans knew they were coming. Scouts vanished on the edges of human space, and every signal was cut off. Yet the armada did not move. The humans did not strike first. They waited, patient as ever, silent giants guarding their borders, letting the galaxy come to them. When the day came, the coalition crossed into Terran space. Thousands of ships advanced like a tide. Engines burned bright, weapons were charged. The void shook with their numbers. Admirals shouted that humans would fall, that no fleet could stand against such power. But in the shadows, the armada watched. The first Terran dreadnought moved forward, massive and silent. Its hull glowed faintly with ancient scars. Behind it, more emerged until the shadows broke apart and the full armada revealed itself. Hundreds of Terran warships aligned in perfect formation, their hulls black as night, their banners glowing with the mark of Earth. For a single breath, silence ruled the void. Both sides stared at each other. The coalition thought their numbers would bring courage, but when they saw the Terran line, fear returned. It was not the size alone. It was the discipline. The humans stood like a wall of steel, unshaken, unbroken, as if nothing in the galaxy could move them. Then the voice came, the same voice that had haunted every admiral's dreams. "You were warned, leave now, or you will not return." The words echoed across the coalition fleet. Some captains begged their admirals to retreat, but pride crushed their pleas. The order was given. The attack began. The void exploded. Thousands of alien ships fired at once, plasma storms, energy beams, missiles. Every weapon the galaxy had was unleashed. The stars themselves seemed to vanish under the fire. For long minutes, it looked as if the armada would be buried, but when the smoke cleared, the humans still stood. Shields glowed faintly, hulls scarred but unbroken. Then came the Terran reply. The armada struck with terrifying precision. Each dreadnought fired broadsides that tore through entire squadrons. Supercarriers launched swarms of fighters, their movements sharp and perfect, cutting down enemy ships with surgical strikes. A single Terran beam split through a line of cruisers, turning them into drifting wreckage. The coalition's numbers crumbled like sand against a storm. Alien admirals shouted, screamed, begged their fleets to hold formation. But chaos spread. Ships broke ranks. Some turned to flee. Others crashed into each other as they tried to escape. The Terran fire. The humans did not chase recklessly. They did not roar with victory. They advanced with steady steps, each shot chosen, each strike final. Hours passed, and the largest armada in history was shattered. Burning wreckage filled. Terran space, thousands of ships reduced to silence. Only fragments of the coalition limped away, carrying with them the story of their failure. The Terrans spoke once more, calm as ever. This was your choice. We warned you. The war is over. Do not return. The message spread across the galaxy. Faster than light, worlds wept for their dead fleets. Empires trembled as their pride collapsed. The truth was clear now, undeniable. Humanity was no myth. Humanity was no ghost. Humanity was the storm, and the storm could not be broken. On worlds once ruled by fear of the Council, hope rose. Colonies that had been crushed now whispered of freedom. Rebels carved the Terran emblem into walls, praying. The storm would one day reach them. For the first time, the Council was no longer feared, only Earth was. But within the Armada, the Terrans did not celebrate. On the flagship Iron Dawn, the Admiral stood silent. His officers looked to him for orders. He only said, "It is finished, but this is not conquest. We guard our borders. We defend our people. We are not their rulers. We are their warning." The galaxy had seen the truth with its own eyes. The war of truth had ended, and in the silence that followed, every world knew Earth had returned, and nothing would ever be the same. A galaxy was quiet after the war of truth. The wreckage of the Great Coalition drifted in cold silence. Thousands of broken ships turning slowly in Terran space. The once proud Council sat hollow, their fleets shattered, their pride crushed, and their voices weak. No more laughter filled their chambers, only fear. News of the defeat spread like wildfire. On rich core worlds, citizens wept for their lost armadas. On outer colonies, oppressed by the Council for centuries, hope burned bright. The myth of Earth had become truth, and the truth was unshakable. Humanity had risen again, and they had destroyed the greatest fleet ever assembled without falling. The Terran Armada did not chase the survivors. They did not conquer new worlds. They did not demand tribute. Instead, they stood guard over the stars that once belonged to them. A wall of black steel and glowing banners. They did not need to move, for their silence spoke louder than any fleet. From the flagship Iron Dawn, the Terran Admiral sent the final message. It was short, calm, and absolute. We do not seek war. We do not seek conquest. But this is Terran space. Cross this line again, and you will not survive. The words echoed across every channel, bouncing from world to world. Every soldier, every worker, every child heard it, and none doubted it. The Council tried to meet again, but their words were hollow. They argued about pride, about rebuilding, about revenge. But deep inside, they knew the truth. Another fleet would mean another graveyard. Another war would mean extinction. Their power had ended, and so the galaxy changed. Merchants no longer feared the Council. They feared the Terran border instead. They adjusted their routes even if it cost more, for no profit was worth the wrath of Earth. Smugglers who once laughed at danger now swore never to enter Terran space, not even by accident. Children were taught never to joke about humans, for They were no joke anymore, but there was something else too. In hidden corners of the galaxy, whispers grew. Some called the Terrans monsters, a storm that would one day drown all life. Others called them saviors, a shield that stood against the cruelty of empires. For the first time in centuries, the balance of power had shifted, and no one knew what tomorrow would bring. On worlds long forgotten, Terran ships landed. They brought supplies to old colonies. They raised their banners again, not with speeches but with quiet purpose. The humans did not boast. They rebuilt, they repaired, they remembered. The galaxy watched in silence, unsure if this was the beginning of a new empire or simply the return of one too strong to erase. Among the alien people, the debate never ended. Some prayed that the humans would remain within their borders. Others feared that one day the storm would not stop. But all agreed on one truth. If Earth ever decided to move beyond their space, no one could stop them. Within the Armada, the soldiers remained disciplined. They did not cheer, they did not sing. They polished their steel and kept their stations ready. The Admiral's words were clear. The galaxy fears us now. That fear will keep them away, but fear must not turn us into monsters. We fight only when they cross the line. We guard. We do not hunt. And so the Terrans became both legend and law. A shadow across the stars, a storm that did not strike without cause, but one that promised death to any who dared to test it. Generations would pass, and still, alien children would whisper the words of the final warning before sleep. This is Terran space trespass and you will not survive. Some would whisper it in fear, others in awe, but none would ever doubt it. The galaxy had laughed once. They had called humans myths, shadows, and ghosts, but no one laughed now. The final warning had been spoken, and the stars themselves seemed to bow in silence. Earth had returned not as conqueror, not as invader, but as a storm that could never again be ignored.